So again, this is just a preview of what we're working on. I believe I have set up so you can share sound. It's just a few different music loops that I put together. It's not super involved, and really you don't have to do a whole lot with this. Again, for the project, you're welcome to just use pre-composed music, someone else's music, just for accompaniment to our project, our abstract motion designs. You can also cut your own from some of these things. I think there were several sources that were shared last class that you can use to find tunes with as well. Those are very, very helpful. So let's go ahead and close this project. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new one so that we can see what this looks like right from the get-go. Okay, so when you open up Premiere Pro, you may see a screen something like this. There may be also a pop-up. You can close it. When you hit New Project, this is going to be kind of where we start. So you're going to get a screen that looks kind of like this. To be honest, I don't really mess with a whole lot of these things. I do have mine set up for audio samples, but we can change that. You do want it set up for time code. Honestly, I don't really mess around with too much of these things. You just choose where you want to save it to so that you make sure that you can find your project. That's one thing you might want to do within the browse section. So we may go ahead and do that. I will go ahead and put this into music time. And I need to make it a different name. So we'll call this Untitled 3, whatever. And then go ahead and click OK. And I hope you can see my whole screen here. If your window doesn't look like mine, that's kind of the first thing we need to take care of within this space. So if you go up to the window menu and down to workspaces, you want to click on the one that says audio. Again, since we're doing audio editing, there's lots of different reasons you might use Premiere Pro. Video editing versus graphic editing versus just straight editing, colorizing, all kinds of different things that you might do within this space. And the arrangement of the panels in the windows really changes quite a lot between them. And, I can demonstrate that really. If we go to editing, it's going to be a much different view. I mean, there's going to be a bigger project panel so you can see things. Your project panel is going to be down here. This is a little bit of sort of a reverse from After Effects. So if you're used to seeing your project panel up here, of course you can move stuff around, right? I mean, you can like click and drag and reset these, and I can drop this anywhere to sort of put it wherever I like. So you can edit those in those space, but there's also up here where you can click between these tabs, and I think they'll take you to the same kind of space as well. So you can easily switch between them. Up here in the tabs, you can also go to Window Workspaces and choose Audio. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and open up some tracks first. And as you can see that I have my project panels here. There's is my mixer, my sequences, and my effect controls are right here in the center, and we'll play with these. We have our program sequences here. These are some essential sound editing options. I had to work on a project once with some dialogue, and cleaning up dialogue is really very convenient and easy to use in this section. We're not going to be playing with too much dialogue today, but I do want to point this out to you that if you need to clean up some audio, take out background noise, get rid of like clicks and S's, or just generally mess with and clean up dialogue, this is a great space to do that in. Sometimes I actually use the music tab to clean up some of that dialogue, and I can show you what some of this looks like. It's just sliders and bars to kind of play around with things. There's a lot of really excellent presets that can help with things when you have to clean up audio that is sort of verbal communication. I highly recommend checking that out. This is our time sequence here. This is where going to be most of our time scaling is going to happen. We'll figure out how to zoom and zoom out. We'll play around with some of these tools, including the pen tool and the razor tool, which is sort of our cut tool. We'll right click a lot because there's a lot of options that you can get to with the right click. But again, just to familiarize yourself with the panels that are here. This is our project panel. We're going to load things in. When we're going to throw in effects, this is our effects panel. We'll probably play with primarily the audio effects today. When we get into like Media Browser, you can explore that. We're going to primarily play with the timeline and then these tools. Cool. So as you can tell, it's telling me to sort of import media to start. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to File and Import. Now you can choose an import folder, which is really pretty nice. So if I choose, let's see if I can find the one that I wanted to use today, Trimmed Mr. Freezy's Loops. I just want to select that folder, because you can have folders and subfolders in this system, which is really, really convenient and nice and easy to use. I'm going to play around with this one because I haven't played with it yet, and I'm kind of excited to get into this just smaller section of many of the music loops that I have. I'm going to go ahead and click Import, and that will just take a moment to sort of load those files. And now you can see here in my project here, underneath project, it's Untitled 3 is the name. I can just hit this drop-down arrow to open up my folders, and I can hit drop-down arrow again to sort of find those tracks that I wanted to play with. Now, these particular tracks that I'm sharing with you guys are things that are sort of split into different sections. This is made by a group called Super Producer Sounds. I paid 20 bucks for these. Obviously, you can't use these for professional things if it's going to be for commercial use without paying for your own license. But for education purposes, just playing around is perfectly fine. So I'm going to play around with some of these. And again, some of them are just sound files. You can tell they have that kind of waveform symbol. To sort of put them on our timeline, I'll drag them out. But some of the time when you open folders this way, there's a lot of files to choose from, in which case I want to kind of preview what they sound like. So to be able to preview them, you can actually just double click on them and they'll open up here under this source option. Now, all of these panels have a lot of times when they fill up too many things, there's a little arrow here. So I can choose different sections, different tabs within this, this channel here. So if I needed to go to effect controls, when I need to start looking at those, you can click on the tabs. But if you can't find the tab, there's that little arrow in the corner as well, which I find very, very helpful. Now, again, I want to preview what this sounds like. So I'm just going to hit play here. And again, my sound is on. So I apologize if this is distracting while you're working on your own. But you should be able to hear that tune. Kind of chill, kind of nice, kind of like upbeat. It's kind of a nice little melody. I mean, there might be some pieces of here that I could cut some of this up to kind of play around with. Sometimes I like to play around with the last couple notes because those fade out in a nice way. Yeah, that little reverb at the end is a really nice part to be able to transition from one section to the other. So maybe I want to use this, I don't know, but I could play around with some of these. So I'll double click here. I'll open up guitar. Just kidding, change the name. There we go. Double click on the symbol instead of the text. That's really nice. I like this little piece right here. So when I'm playing around with these, the way that you look at these, the 808s are the bass drops. The chords and guitar are going to be your melody. Your pad and your plex are probably going to be a little bit more, what I'm guessing is kind of the percussion section. Pads are going to be strings. That pluck is strings as well. Nice. It's kind of like a, I don't know, 80s vibe a little bit, which is nice. Now this full track is actually going to be all of these things layered together just on one set, right? So this is basically 2 bars already pre-composed, but you can also have the pieces. And let's just play the full track so we can hear what that sounds like. Sounds a little funky at the end. I think there's a little, gets a little bit slower here at the end than it should, I think. But there's some very great potential. Now, what's really nice about this when you're playing around with these things, of course, you can just use the full track. I mean, you can just straight up, play with that if you want to. But I think there's some advantages in being able to layer these things a little bit at a time. And let's say if I wanted it to sort of intro into the full track, it would be nice to maybe hear the chords or the guitar, the melody, and then slowly put in the layers before you hear the full thing. And I think that's one of the advantages of having it broken up in this way. So if I want to sort of maybe start with, the melody, or the pad actually would be pretty fun, but I'm just going to click and drag to drop these in. Okay. Go ahead and drag and drop one of these in, and then let's take a look at how to rearrange and sort of pre-compose some of these things. Okay. So again, to drag and drop these files, you just need to go into your project section under, the section that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use just the 98 tempo one. I'm going to start with chords, I think, and then just drag and drop this in. And that will set up your timeline. And let's figure out how to edit this a little bit so it makes things easier to see. And there's quite a lot of things that we can do here. Let me just also make sure my sound is on. Share sound is on. Okay. So spacebar will play. It's pretty standard. As you can tell now, we're not in the source section. This is just something that we've actually put onto the timeline, and it makes a duplicate of that chords here in your projects panel where that chords is included. Nice little reverb at the end of that. You can also see that there's kind of a projection of this, but however, I mean, there's no video on this, so we're really not going to be using video. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up in a little bit bigger scale so you guys can see it. And again, the button to do that is just hover over any of these panels. I mean, it happens with any of these panels, including the timeline, and hit the tilde button. It's the button that's to the left of the number 1, right above the tab key, right below the escape key. Now we want to be able to see the waveforms a little bit better because there's a lot of options when we actually use this kind of track feature, and we're not using any video. So do you guys see this thicker kind of gray bar here in the center? If over on my layer side, this again, you're building tracks of things that you layer up within the little clips. So we're going to be putting clips into our timeline. These are our tracks over here. I want to be able to move this up so that I can have more space for my audio. So what I'm doing is clicking and dragging on this middle section. It is essentially, just a thicker gray bar. I'm going to move this up to the top. And my video sections, I'm actually going to turn these channels off. So if you click on this V1, V2, V3, you can turn on or off your video or audio channels. If you want to hear a channel only, you can actually just turn off the others. There's another way to do this as well with like kind of the mute or single track. But this is how you turn those channels on and off. And it's nice to have multiple channels because what ends up happening when you work with these things is you kind of have a lot of clips scattered around and you're trying to work in one section. So I'm going to move this, again, gray bar up to the top. And then underneath these channel sections, and I kind of do it right here next to the timeline, if you hover just underneath one of these track sections, you can also expand them. And look what that does. We can actually see much more of the waveform, which is nice because there's a lot of things that you can do within the waveforms feature, including this little option here where you can add and remove keyframes. Okay, and you can see now we have a left and right channel. So this is the 2 different ears. If you've got your headphones in, or 2 different speakers, you'll have a left speaker and a right speaker. So that's pretty standard within that feature. You can also open up these other track features as well. And I like to have kind of a little bit larger space to work with these because you can fade in and out things, which is a nice way to sort of get transitions between clips. If you want to fade things together, there's also a way to use Adobe Audition to crossfade things. We can flip them, we can change the pitch, all kinds of fun stuff that way. So you should be able to do that, get these sort of in a position to where you can see the waveforms, and then we'll be ready to proceed. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording there, and then let me know if you guys are able to do that. So let's say I wanted to fade this in, right? And this bar right here, this is actually the volume bar. And when I click and drag on this, you should be able to see here's my decibels. That dB is decibels. About -40 or so is about where you stop being able to hear anything at all. Let's see if that's true. Can you guys hear anything? I can't hear anything. So essentially about -40 decibels is about the point where you're sort of like fading something to non-existence. I'm not going to do this, but you can turn this up. Sometimes in voiceover files and things, if you're working with like client and you're making a video for them and you're getting some audio from like voice or whatever, it's very quiet and you should be able to tell about how loud or quiet it is based on the size of the waveform. So if you can tell here, these are sort of like a variable in the loudness or the quietness of this clip. And of course, at the end here, when it fades out, it's going to go a little bit quieter. And I think you can hear the difference. I'm just going to play this little section here. So it's got a nice little reverb on the end, but do you hear that kind of transition where it slowly fades out? And you can see that also in the waveform, which is really nice. Now, one thing that we might want to do with this is to be able to zoom in a little bit. And here at the bottom, I've moved my zoom screen, my zoom controls. So if you need to move your zoom controls to be able to see the bottom of the screen, this is your zoom in and out. It's a little bit confusing because when you make this smaller, it makes the stuff on the screen bigger. So you're sort of zooming in when you shrink this. If you want to see more of your timeline, then you can extend this out. So here we are at about 6 seconds, etc. I'm sorry, 6 minutes. All right, so there's your zoom, and I'm just clicking and dragging on the end node. This is the beginning node. I can scroll by clicking in the center of this. I can shrink this from the front or from the end to be able to zoom in and get a little bit closer to the waveform. And what's nice about this, again, if I wanted to sort of fade this in at the beginning, rather than have it kind of suddenly catch at the beginning, I'm gonna go ahead and add that in this way. I believe you can use the keyframes to do this. I'm going to use the pen tool. So I happen to know the pen tool hotkey is P, which is nice. Same thing as Illustrator and Photoshop. So the pen tool is P, and as you can tell, just like any other curve that you're used to using, you can actually click on this line to add a point. And as you can tell, this does add a keyframe. So if you want to do it this way, you can kind of transition, and then I believe you can add a keyframe to do the same thing. Similar to the, I do want to add 2 of these, by the way, to go ahead and add 2 points. So we want it to be able to hear it about, 15 frames in. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of move this keyframe over where I want it to be. This is where I'd like it to fade in, which means I need it to sort of be quieter at the beginning. So we may not hear that first couple notes of the tune, but I do want it to kind of fade in at the beginning, which I think is going to be a nice feature. So give that a go. Give you a second to do that. We would call this a ramp up, essentially, within the music here. I'm extending this a little bit because I think it went a little bit too quickly. And I can blend that a little bit better. I'll go ahead and pause recording there.
So did you only edit the line that's for the left ear? Is there another line for the right that we can't see?
So that's a really good question. I'm really glad that you asked that. This is actually the volume across the whole track. So it's just the volume control. It's not the left or right. I will show you where you can get left and right. There is a way to change those audios separately, but this is just the volume line.
Okay.
Very, very good question. Okay, so what I want to do now is I have this, and I'm not sure exactly if this is the right space of where I want it to be. Again, you can scrub across these things. Premiere Pro is really great with scrubbing. And honestly, I scrub when I'm doing my video editing for YouTube. So I don't have to watch, a 3-hour demo after doing a 3-hour demo. I can kind of just scrub across and find places that need to be edited. So it's nice that you can hear that kind of, you guys can hear that, right? Kind of annoying. But you can hear this kind of scrub feature. I'm glad it does that because it makes editing a lot easier. So that's a feature, not a bug. But what we want to do is fade this in just a little bit better. I want to have a little bit more of a Bezier curve to be able to fade this in. And you can do that with the pen tool again. I still have the pen tool selected, P, hotkey for the pen tool. I'm going to hold down the Option key. Nope, just the Command key or the Control key on a PC. And that's going to give me this caret or this chevron symbol, this kind of little triangle. When I click and drag on this will give me a Bezier handle, which now I can slowly fade this in or ramp this up in a really nice way. And I think this is a great way to do fades. It'll sort of come in a little bit more natural way. I can move this around. When I'm not holding down the Command or the Control key. And then I can fade this in. And if we want it to fade in from the other direction too, if you want competing, handlebars, you can do it that way as well. However you want this to sort of fade. It looked like mine was sticking a little bit. So when I hit the Command key and start interacting with one of these handlebars and then let go of it, should go back to normal. Mine seemed a little sticky there for a second. So again, I'm going to have to just kind of audio play this. I want my decibels at 0 change, right? So I don't want it to necessarily seem like it's louder than it needs to be. That sounds nice. That sounds way better. And now if you wanted to just test this little section, we're going to add in our in and out points. This is something that you can set up for your controls. I'll have to zoom out to do this from my initial screen. So I'll do that here in a second, but that'll be the next step if we want to preview this. So let me go ahead and pause real quick, make sure you guys did okay with the pen tool. Okay, so the next section, again, I want to add in my ins and outs. The hotkeys for those are I and O. Just to show you where those are at, it's under the markers here at the top. So when I click on markers, you can see mark in and mark out. That will be able to, again, I and O, and X is for clip, selection if you want to select something. So you have all these different, and you can also go to in or go to out if you want to. Shift I or Shift O, that upward arrow is the shift symbol. This will get you the option to sort of add in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the I key. I'm going to sort of play test this intro. So I, and then when I scrub over to where I want it to say, okay, this is as far as I need to listen, I'll hit the O key. And now you can see I've added in these little clips that are things that you can now click and drag. They should kind of snap a little bit to your player. So wherever you use your player, this is a really great feature to sort of scrub with. And then this is a great feature to sort of get it to snap to if you want to play these. Now to get it to play just in between the in and out, there's an extra step. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the tilde key to zoom out of this window. So we're not in this window anymore. This is where we need to control that. I'm going to move my zoom handles here. This section here, this where it says program, is where we need to handle turning on the player for just the looping playback. If you don't have this button here, you can actually add it by hitting this little plus sign. And when you hit that plus sign, it should be right here, loop playback. I'm gonna do that one more time. So to get this to work, to get it to play in between the in and the out section, you do have to click this button under the program section that says loop playback. If you don't see that button, and just to show you that it works, okay. If you don't see that button, you want to hit this little button editor, this plus sign, and then choose this symbol. It's the loop playback. It looks like a triangle, a play triangle within a little squared section. You can click on that one and drag it down to add it to your bar. Okay, and click OK. Hopefully that worked for you as well. So now I can sort of play this and make sure it sounds really nice. And a couple things that you can take from visual art to music design. When you get the waveforms that look consistently and even when we start clipping things together, when you want to get things to layer up, they should look like they're even. You want things to go over time and be composed nicely in the same way. You want the details to be as nicely designed as the full composition. So in the same sense that you're used to composing things in visual design, composing still frames and then composing motion is exactly the same thing in music, as far as I can tell so far. It's the same kind of art process. You want to have a really nice amount of detail combined with a really nice composition. Okay, sounds pretty good. So let me go ahead and zoom out here. I will move my zoom key here and I will zoom out. Again, the zoom bar is at the bottom. And I don't need to deal with this in and out here, so I'll move that around, or I can just turn it off if I don't want to deal with my in and out. So now it'll just play through. Now, as you can tell, this track is actually 8 bars already. It's 2 sections that play through in the same loop, and then it adds a little bit different ending here. In music, for some reason, couples of things, groups of 2, sound really nice. When you do 2 things at once. In visual design, it's 3. Groups of 3s are really nice. It adds a nice variety to it. 3s are also great in music, but at least you want to have couples of things. So if you can tell here, this is about the middle of the track. There's a little bit of a transition piece where that music transitions to the next section. And then this section is where it does the same melody again, and then fades out at the end. So this is a really good spot for me to add in another channel, in which case we can start layering up some of our music tones here. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this one so I can preview it in my preview section. I don't know if I want that now or the pad. Yeah, I think the pad's going to be better. Let's check the 808. Yeah, we'll wait to drop that. Okay, so let's go ahead and, oh, maybe guitar. That might be nice, but let's try the pad. So I'm going to go ahead and drag the pad in. Now I'm going to put this on a different channel, a different track channel, because if you overlap it, and let me just show you what this looks like. If I overlap this, this is going to cut. So it actually deleted some of that, that music file. I'm going to switch back to my selection arrow. What's nice about this is that you never lose anything. That track still exists under there. You're just replacing it or sort of cutting it. And all the tracks work this way. Even when you use the razor tool to cut things, there's never a loss of information. If you can tell here, I can just hover over this edge of this clip and I can either shrink it. I mean, you can do this as well just to try it. You can shrink this track here so that I can sort of layer this up in several plays through before we get to that fade at the end. So if you can tell, then it just stops playing that, right? There's a little bit of reverb there, which is a nice feature, but as you can tell, this track still exists underneath. Now I want to be able to line this up in that nice little section there. And a lot of times I'm going to zoom in here. So I need to move my zoom controls again. Dang it, zoom. We should just turn this off. Oh yeah, question? Go ahead.
The in and out to come off.
How to turn off the in and out?
Yeah.
So you can actually just uncheck that button, that loop playback button, to sort of turn them off. And essentially what that means is even wherever your in and outs are, so like I could have my out over here, but when I just not have this checked, it's just going to ignore the in and out and just keep playing.
Gotcha.
Does that fix it for you?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit tilde again to zoom in here. I've got my second track on my second audio track. And again, to make sure that these play, you will not hear your second audio track if you uncheck this. So do you see how it says A2 and A3 and those are blue now? Those audio tracks are now turned on. I want to zoom in a little bit here so that I can actually see my waveforms, because the waveforms are going to help me line this track up. I think the break is right about here. Kind of there's a little extra dip. So I'm going to go ahead and play this so I can hear where the transition is. Make sure I'm correct. Yep, that's when it starts over, right there. So I'm going to actually zoom in here so I can make sure I can see it and get this lined up real nice. And there's that extra little dip. Let me move my zoom. So here's the first note when it starts to ramp up. So I want to be right here where that transition is. And then I'm going to line this up with this clip so that you actually start hearing this secondary. I think I added in the strings, I believe. And let me zoom out and we'll go ahead and play that. All right, and that next section is gonna be a great place to start throwing in the 808s. So this is really, really fun. I hope you guys are having fun with this already. Again, it's gonna sound off to you, and you kind of have to trust your ear in the same way that you trust your eye when you're working with visual design or with motion design. When things are not composed, it's gonna sound off to your ear. So you really have to pay attention. If I move this over just a little bit, what's gonna happen is that the notes are not gonna line up. Sometimes that's nice if you're trying to create eighth notes, but then again, you need to be off a full note or sort of or off a half note if you're trying to make eighth notes from fours. So you need to make sure that this lines up really well. And again, I try to just make sure that that's nice and easy to do by zooming in until I can find exactly the transition point. And the visualization of the waveform helps me to kind of line those things up. Okay. You can, again, I should note, just as a suggestion, the more you zoom in, the more fine-tuned your movements will be. Once you zoom in a certain distance, you should be able to see this little indicator that's telling you this is one frame. It's the same thing. Everything is, transitional over 30 seconds, or excuse me, 30 frames a second, in the same way that sort of real life is 30 frames a second. So they have this split up into that many. You can tell that here, right? So this is 5 frames, 10 frames, 15 frames, 20, 25, and then it starts over at 30 again. So you can see this indicator here in the same way that you zoom in all the way in After Effects and you have that different colored sort of by column, if you guys know what I'm talking about, that sort of shows the individual frames. And you can see now I'm clicking individually by the frames. And generally speaking, your music should align to a frame. You're not going to have transitions in between frames. And if you need to, then that might be an issue with the tunes themselves. So I want to make sure that this lines up. You can zoom in and see the individual frames. And again, you can move easier compared to when I zoom out really far and I can't see that. It's a little bit harder to try and get it to line up. So it definitely helps to zoom in and zoom out when you're trying to align these things. Okay. Now within this section, since this is an opportunity to sort of drop the beat, I might want to, move this over, clip it or copy it. In which case, before this one starts, I might want to play the beginning again, the intro again, within this section. So I'm thinking that I might clip this one, and let's try the clipping feature to do that. So let me just line this up so it's in the right spot before that next transition. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a copy of this. So I'm gonna drag this one back. This is one way to clip things. That's a clip there. We're sort of making a clip. So dragging it back from the end. The other way to make clips is to use the C tool or the razor tool. This is going to make two versions of this. So if you can see here when I'm working on mine, that the razor tool is going to sort of show that you're cutting this. It is going to sticky to the ends or to your player. So again, you can use your player to make edits. And again, I do have this track selected. So if you hit your V key, which is your selection tool, you can click or select on these or hold shift and select them both. You can drag select if you're clicking in this kind of empty space to be able to drag select tracks. So that's kind of how you can select things. This is the one that I want to clip. So I want to make sure that that one's selected. I'm going to hit the C key to use the razor tool. I'm going to line that up with my player and just click once, and that should cut it for me. Now I'm going to move this one over here because I still want to use this. And I think there's an opportunity to have this be a little bit of a anticipation before the beat drop, which I think would be really nice if it lines up with this anticipation that's here too, this little fade. Now I want to be able to have this sort of play through a little bit. So I want to make a duplicate of this. Or in this case, I could use a duplicate of this one. So let me show you how to make duplicates of things now that I've cut it at that nice little placement there. So if you hold down the Option key with your selection tool, which is V, so V selection tool, hold down the Option key, you can click and drag to make a duplicate copy. Now I've moved this just off to the side. This ends up happening to me a lot of the times when I'm doing music editing and things. I'm just going to have like loose clips hanging out outside of the composition that I'm trying to place onto the timeline. One other thing that I also like to do, again, I hope you guys are okay with making that copy. Let me know if I need to slow down. If you right click to add another audio channel, that's a great place to add some extra clips that can just sort of be outside of the sounds that you're hearing. So if you need more audio clips, and I'm guaranteeing we'll need more because I've just barely started the melody stuff, we'll need to add in some beats and stuff. I'm going to right click here and choose add track. So when I add a track, it should add an A4 here. And you can, I don't think there's a limit, or at least I haven't hit it yet, on how far down these things can go. In which case, if I don't want to hear this one, it actually turns the track off to start with. You guys see how this one is not turned blue? So that is going to be an off track, which means no matter even where this clip is in the timeline, you should not hear anything on this track channel because it's not engaged. So again, I'm going to just play this from the beginning. Oh, you are hearing it. It's weird. All right, well, I'll leave it over here. I can mute this one also. There's the mute button. I'll try that instead. There we go. Now we're not hearing both tracks. It's kind of cool hearing both, though. I'm going to have to layer some stuff up here in a minute. So there's the mute. That definitely helps. Now I wanted this track to be extended here to replay part of the beginning. And I want to zoom in a little bit on this one. And I'm going to make it so it's not going to fade as much at the beginning. Maybe keep the fade, but not as much. Let's see if I can line this up here. There we go. We got that lining up nice at the end. So that's how we know we kind of got this in the center. Let's play through it. And beat drop. Okay. I think we have an opportunity to add a little bit of a melody here in between in this next section. But let me go ahead and pause record and see how you guys are doing. All right, so this is the section that I think I want to add another melody to. I think it starts to have the opportunity when I play through it about here, having heard that melody now this third time, and we're starting to add in tracks. So we've heard it once, we've heard it, well, once, and then the second time we're hearing it, we're adding in something. So the third time that this transitions again to the next section, which I believe is right here, or it could be here. Okay, this is where the track opens up. So this is the continuation of the loop. This then is the center, and you can hear that little crescendo in the middle, that little chord there. That might be a great place to add in another melody. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my guitar. We'll start some guitar work there. Let's double click on this one and we'll listen to it. I like that little section there. So let's try and add that in. I need to zoom this out a little bit so I can just add this track. And my third one. Okay. And I'll hit the tilde so I can zoom in and look at what I'm working on. So this is that crescendo. I think I want to use this second piece of this. So I'm just going to shorten this one until that second piece a little bit. And we'll see if we can add that in. Let's see if I line that up right. Not quite. I need to cut this a tiny bit. To zoom in closer here. This is where I want that crescendo to sort of line up with that second chord there. Okay, let's preview that. Add in my ins and outs here. And I just need to turn on my loop button. We'll go back and listen. I think it's not quite lined up, but that sounds pretty good. I'll try and mute this and see if I can hear it. Back to a tiny bit. Snap. So sticky. There we go. One of my keys gets stuck sometimes. Still off a little bit. Let's come after that crescendo there. Nope. Oh, music editing. Okay. Try that. I'm going to play through this once. I'll turn this off. Not too bad. I think it's still off just a tiny bit. I can mess with that for like an hour, but it's okay. We'll move on. Let's go ahead and add in the drop now, which is the next section that we want to get to. And I think my 808s is going to be the one I want to play. I think I have an added pad as well. Or is that the pad? Let's see. Is that the pluck? Can't remember. I added the pad already. Okay, cool. So I want to add these in next. And our 808s. I've not pre-composed this, you guys. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just playing around. Just in case there was any question. See how that sounds. Sounds good, but we need our melody. So I will go to the zoomed in version here. I'm going to drop these down so that it's a little bit organized. So we can start to hear the whole thing together. Yeah, not too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and pause there for a minute. Okay, so this sounds pretty cool. Again, it's pre-composed things, so we haven't done a whole lot of like creative work necessarily yet. Let's play with this piece over here and do some of that. So I'm going to put this as our endpoint, and we'll kind of play with a different section. And a lot of times this is something I do, sort of like pre-compose something that I think basically works for what we want. I think this would be a really nice melody to be able to add some motion to. I think there's a lot of like drops and beats and melodies, symbols and things that you could follow along with as you add in those markers. But this is something that I want to play around with, is the fact that I can actually extract and use the cutting tools to be able to edit some of the tune here. And I know a feature that I really liked at the end of this was this sort of fade melody section. So that might be something to play around with. So I'm actually going to shrink this. Or you know what, I'll use the razor tool. And this clip by itself might be fun to layer. We'll see how that goes. And again, what I'm trying to show you is that you don't have to be beholden to this just section here, right? I mean, you can actually go through and cut up individual notes and kind of pre-compose them. So let's see what this sounds like if I layer this up in fours or couplets, 2 couplets. Right, so this is a totally different melody. I need to take out a note in there. Zoom in a little bit closer. A little bit closer. Single note. Now we'll fade this out a little bit faster. And let me use my pen tool to do that. Oops. Back this up a little bit away from the other clip. So this is kind of fun, honestly. You can layer these things up if I wanted to play this note. Now, if I wanted to go up a little bit, that's when we're going to start looking at pitch changes. And I think that's kind of the section we want to get into. So you can use the same note, but just shift it a pitch a little bit, and that will sort of change the note. It sounds a little bit unrealistic, but can be done. So let me show you how to do that. Here I am just zoomed out. Here's my clips that I wanted to change. I'm going to start layering some of these up. You know, if I just have a few of these in a row, this is a trick I use to kind of layer these up a little bit better. Right, so we're changing completely the tempo. Let's see if we can create a chord out of this. So I'm going to make one of these a little bit higher pitch. So if I go into my effects section down here, and again, I'm closing my project panel. I can come back and look at more of these things, but under my effects, there's a whole section of audio effects that you can play around with. And these are really, really fun. Time and pitch is kind of the one section that we want to take a look at. Pitch shifter is the one we want to play around with. So this is something that I'm going to put onto this clip, and in which case I'm going to change it with my effect controls panel here. So again, to get to this, just going to go to effects panel. It should be on the left-hand side underneath your project window. If you got this, huge files all drilled down, you won't be able to see it. So it helps if you can close those. Go to the effects under audio effects and choose time and pitch, and then pitch shifter. So I'm going to drag and drop this onto this clip. As you can tell, I've got a new pitch section that shows up into my effect controls on the clip that's selected. Oops, sorry, is there a question? Gotta go. Yeah, no worries, man. Take care. All right, so this is, I think, a really fun one. Now, most of your effects with audio are going to be done under this custom setup. So to be able to do this, I'm going to go into edit. And when I get into the edit section, this is my sort of shifting tones here. So if I want to sort of play this one, I'll do in and out here. Do that out a little bit better. And I want to shift this. So let's make it a little bit lower note. 5/5. I'm going to tone this down as well. Now, I don't know how well this is going to work. I'm not a musician. See if I can hear it even. Nope, that sounded terrible. Try that. Too low. Try negative one. Let's do that. This chord here. Let's try a single note. So you can tell there's a little bit of a change there. And again, I'm not a musician, so let's go up instead. See, that sounds a little bit better. That's not too bad. So these are really pretty fun to play with. So I might be able to do a stair step here, which would be kind of fun. See if that works. And I can do the same effect on this one, just so you can show that you can do this kind of change. And let's do that too. So now I've added in a little bit of a stair step there. So there's some transitional opportunities here so that you can use that pitch and time. Another really fun effect that plays around with some clips, and I don't know that this is the perfect clip example to do this with, but if I want to go ahead and let's make a duplicate copy over here and play it down with another section, is to reverse time. So sometimes this works a little bit better with bass beats, and I'll try that here with the melody to be able to sort of get it to reverse. So I'm going to make a copy of this one so we can hear what it sounds like first. And then I believe to go the reverse, might be under here, speed and duration. So if I click on that, now this is similar to sort of time stretch in After Effects, which I can't remember if we looked at yet, but it's basically the same menu. If I want something to last longer, to go faster, you can increase the speed. It will also increase the pitch. So when you increase speed, it's going to like do that chipmunking effect if I turn it up. But I can also reverse the speed, which will actually make it kind of flip that clip, essentially. So now it's going to sound the reverse, which, I mean, doesn't fade correctly now and things like that. But you can do this with bass beats and all kinds of fun stuff to be able to get this really like interesting kind of a sound. So I think this one was my 808s here. Let me see if I can do it with that. So I'll just take one of these beat sections, and it looks like the beginning is sort of clipped nicely. And I'll show you how to do that. Zoom in a little bit. And let's reverse it and see what that sounds like. If I can make a copy. So I need to fade it a little bit at the end. But as far as being very creative within this, and let me go ahead and add that fade at the end so it doesn't do that kind of like clicking. You can have quite a lot of fun with being able to come up with your own sounds because you're almost kind of creating them from the music that you already have. So there's kind of an opportunity to do some really fun stuff this way. Still got that zip at the end. Fade that even more. Still doing it. Well, this might be an opportunity to throw it into Adobe Audition. All right, let me pause the record right there. Let me see how you guys are doing with that. So as I'm working on this kind of like, I don't know, zipper melody, I'm not sure what you even call it. There may be some opportunity there. Now, if you guys can see, there's a little bit of a space here, and I want these to line up. One thing that you can do is kind of right-click in the space and choose Ripple Delete, and that will just get the clips to move over. And it actually gets all the clips from the left-hand side to move over this way as well. So this is a really great feature if you're doing video editing or kind of music editing in this way. And you can really get these things to sort of like ripple across so that you can get rid of spaces. Highly recommend using that. So fun sound effects you can make out of this stuff. It's kind of neat. Oops. All right, now let's say I wanted to change this up a little bit. It's way too loud. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to right-click this clip, and let's take this into Adobe Audition. So this is just one of those features. Now this does open this file up into a different program. It looks a little bit weird, but you can do some fun stuff with it. And can you guys see that on my screen? I think you can. So what's nice about this as well is that as you're using this, and you just automatically save this, it will auto update in your Premiere Pro. So there's an opportunity to sort of go back and forth between these things. Again, you can play here. You can see this kind of heat map. If you don't want to see this heat map kind of thing, you can go back into the waveform here. You can tell where that kind of clicking zipper effect here is at the end. So there may be a way for me to sort of fade this out. You can also do this with multiple clips, and I'll show you that here in a second. There's also an option where you can go from waveform to multi-track. So if you want to be able to see that, you can do that here, and this will give you something that you're maybe used to seeing. I need to zoom in a little bit closer so I can see it, to be able to find that track there. So you can bounce back and forth. Let's see, I need to throw this one in here. There we go. So there it is. Zoom in a little bit. All right. So I wanted this to sort of go out and then back. This is something that I can do with Adobe Audition, which I think is really useful. So I'm going to make a duplicate copy of this. And as I copy this, do you guys see these little X's that show up over top? Essentially what I'm doing is like getting this clip to sort of like layer up with itself. So it'll do this crossfade between the two. So rather than in Premiere, when you layer things up, it does like a hard cut. Again, the sound still exists, but it's not playing that section when you overlap it. This is actually layering up both tracks on top of each other, which is pretty cool. Now I want this to flip reverse. So I'm going to do that. I remember how to invert this. Remember. You can add echoes and things. There's filters, noise, reverb, and pitch. It's automatic pitch corrector. See if I can remember how to flip this. I have to look it up real quick. Can loop play it, but that's not what I'm going to do. Can't remember how to flip it. Let me look it up real fast. Effects in reverse. Okay. Just kidding. So I can option. Well, we can layer these up in. Let me zoom in here so we can see how this crossfade works. So there are the lines here that you can actually control and edit with this little gray key bar. And it actually goes in a full square. So you can change the length here. And then when I go up or down, it's changing how it's going to fade this. So let me layer this up so there's a little bit more of an overlap here. And so you can hear what's going on. And this is kind of one of the advantages of using Audition. So now it becomes sort of two layered sounds. So you can sort of extend clips this way. I haven't found a better way to sort of extend clips in Premiere Pro. There may be a way to do that, but at least in this sense, you can sort of get these consistent, repeated elements to go from one section to the next. So it's sort of this continuous zapping now, which is pretty fun. So who knows, you may need to make some sound effects. You can do quite a lot of editing with the clips that you have. Alrighty. Now, when I save this, this should auto-populate back into Premiere Pro. So let me go ahead and hit Command S to save.